and I'll tell you where some of the hardest decisions around this is going to be is around busing and cafeteria. But if we say, for example, told our staff, if you're over 60 or 65, you can't work when we come back. Um, that's about half of our bus staff, and we wouldn't have we wouldn't have employees to be able to bring our kids to school. So we want to create ultimately we want to create a circumstance where everybody feels safe, and feels comfortable. But if we get to a point where we just don't have staff, we're going to have to figure out some modified planning around that. So one of the things that Kristen and I have talked about offline is, what if we were limited to half of our busing staff? What would we do? Would we do double runs? Would we stagger our starts? Would we increase the walk zone? Would we look at other options, and really try to make some good decisions? So it's a long way of answering your question, Ms. Litton, but the answer is yes. We've been looking at that, and we have told some people that they can't work already, and we would try to follow the guidance as best we could.
Thank you. Ms. Russell, you had your hand up, and then I believe Mr. Ridinger would be next. So Ms. Russell.
First of all, Dr. Noonan, I just want to say thank you to you and your staff, because this has got to be a very maddening exercise for you, going down the rabbit hole of what if, and all the contingencies. So I appreciate that you and your staff are even willing to try and take this absolutely unfathomable beast on and figure out at least some of the answers and some of the scenarios that we're looking at. And one question I had is what I understand is that the Parks and Rec Department have released a statement with regard to summer camps, and that they are going to be waiting, I guess, first of all, for May 15th to see what the governor has to say. And then they're going to have a go or no go date of June 1st with regard to summer camps. And I know that some of those summer camps typically occur on our fields and in our facilities. So I'm just curious how that's going to be reconciled with regard to school property and the summer camps, depending on what their ultimate decision is.
Yeah, I'm looking over to the right of my screen at Kristen right now. I guess I didn't see that statement, so I can't respond to it right now. But Kristen, perhaps you know something else.
So I know we're really trying to be thoughtful in terms of the things that we can and can't do in our buildings. So summer camps, daycare programs, really looking at all of those different things. And do we have the ability to offer those programs or to allow that use of our facilities and be safe? And we really have been saying we're kind of waiting for that next set of guidance and really looking at seeing where we're going. And now the governor has the phases in his reopening plan. We are going to work closely with Parks and Rec to ensure that we're doing what's absolutely best for our citizens and working in collaboration.
Okay, great. And my apologies, Dr. Noonan, I didn't mean to catch you off guard like that. I think it was one of those things that happened to be in one of the city's COVID updates, buried in some very small print about Parks and Rec summer camps, and it just happened to catch my eye. So my apologies for springing that one on you unexpectedly when that wasn't even remotely where we were at. So
No, totally fine. And I appreciate you understanding the what if scenarios and going down the rabbit hole. I think I might drive our chief academic officer, Mr. Bates, off the cliff if I ask him one more time, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? And he's like a deer in headlights right now.
All right. Well, Mr. Ridinger, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No deep questions, Dr. Noonan, just a couple of points I wanted to raise. One, I'm sure you're thinking about this already, and it's appropriate to be the most concerned about the Falls Church City students and the effect on education. But I think we also need to be very concerned, as I'm sure you are, with staff morale, teacher morale, support staff morale. And it's got to be, it's impossible for me to imagine for people whose entire lives is educating people not being able to do that as effectively. So I just think we as a school system want to make sure, yes, we already know that we're not going to be able to give unless things change, teachers and support staff the raise we want to give them, but let's give them all the support that we can for this new environment. I'm super concerned about that. The other thing is, and I'm sure you've thought about these things as well, as I think about if we have a delayed opening in the fall, sort of the different types of students and the different ages of students that will be affected. And I might be wrong, but my thoughts swing to the extremes, the kindergartners and the seniors. And the reason is, I think the younger you are, the harder it is to do distance learning. And so if there's an option, or if there's a differential ability to bring people on, I'd of course personally skew towards doing in-person education for the youngest kids, even partially first. The second thing is, I think the fall might be a very difficult time for our seniors. The start of senior year can be very difficult for kids who are applying to college and thinking about their next career. And I'm wondering what they're going to be going through if they're going through a delayed start. Are they going to be able to visit colleges? Are they going to be worried about their grades and how this is going to affect the admissions process? So I just think it's really important to think that through. And for the college and career counseling part, do we want to make sure that we've got programs built out in advance for how to do that virtually, so that our kids, I'm less worried about them getting into schools. I'm worried about them stressing about what's going to happen with regard to schools. And also, if there are things that we could be doing now, if we think a delay in education is a realistic possibility, to move some students into some of the distance learning capabilities, courses that are actually designed, the things that people do electronically, whether for some, especially high school students, we might try to move some students into those spaces so that, if you're doing a remote learning class in astronomy from George Mason, then whether you're doing that from a terminal in school or a terminal at home doesn't make a whole lot of difference. And so there might be some capability to shift some level of students to places where the negative effect on their learning will be reduced. So just a few comments. I did want to briefly, before I hand the mic back, again, applaud you and the entire staff for the work you're doing. As I read the paper every day, and I still read the paper every day, and read about what's happening in other school systems around the country and this area, I'm continually impressed with what all of you are doing. And Ms. Sharp, you're on the same row as Dr. Noonan, but over to kudos. You've done an awesome job as the COVID czar in getting us ready for this. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reidinger. And to a couple of your points, I just would want to respond quickly to say, one of the things that has been also kicked around is differentially bringing students back by grade level, knowing that high school and middle school kids are more likely to be able to stay home by themselves than elementary students, for example. If we were in a circumstance where we could bring elementary kids back before high school kids or middle, we certainly want to sort of think about that if need be. We've also talked about, what about our special ed kids, and they're potentially disproportionately impacted by this. And so how do we bring those students back as well? But the other is knowing, and sort of more to your last point, is knowing that we're getting into this in the fall, potentially, we have a much better opportunity to plan using Virtual Virginia, for example, and potentially even developing a process where we move, instead of an A-B day, maybe go to an accelerated block for our high school students for next year, which is, it's called a 4x4. So they might take 4 classes in the fall and 4 classes in the spring. So maybe 3 of those classes are online and one of them's, an elective, but they would be focused on those 3 classes online only, as opposed to all 6 classes. So there's a lot of opportunity within that to structure something that's meaningful for our kids. And it's going to take some flexibility and some creativity. But I have confidence that our team is able to carry the day.
While I am still speaking, let me throw one more thing out there. I'm also sure you've thought about this. I I don't think we're necessarily in the new normal, but I also don't think the future new normal will be the same as the old normal. And it's important to think about not just the interim, but how is education going to change? And how do we be better prepared to respond to that new environment? It might be both a necessity and an opportunity to change to address an environment that is changing all around us.
Thanks for that. We may never have another snow day again.
I see Mr. Brett is happy with that idea. Are there any other comments or questions from members? Ms. Litton?
This isn't really a question, but just kind of an observation from talking to a lot of other parents, is how some kids seem to be really thriving actually in this online environment versus other kids are really struggling. And I see that with my own kids. And, you know, it would get really complicated to give too much choice, but, you know, if we could only have some students in the building at a time, you know, is there some way we can make sure the students who really need it being in the building the most can be, versus students who feel fine not being in the building maybe don't need to be. So I just kind of throw that out as an observation of what I've seen.
Yeah, thank you for that. We've kind of noodled that around too. And the one thing I don't want to do, and it kind of goes back to Mr. Reidinger's comment about teacher morale, is anything I could do to not have our folks double plan, where they're planning for in-class instruction and online instruction would be best. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't do both. Like if we have 8, just as an example, 8 fourth grade teachers and you know, 6 of the classes worth of kids want to come back, but 2 of the classes worth don't. Maybe 2 of those teachers in that 4th grade could potentially be the online teachers of record, and they could do some of that work. So we're trying to think it all the way through and trying to be creative, but it's a good point. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions at this point? I'm trying to look carefully and make sure I don't miss anybody. If not, then I'm just going to take a moment and echo Ms. Russell and Mr. Reidinger's comments, and thank you, Dr. Noonan, and your entire team. And I'm glad that Mr. Bates is still driving down the road and not swerving, as it were. But thank you all sincerely for the amazing work you've been doing. Scenario planning seems to be clearly the way to go at this point, given that there are so many things that are uncertain. And the fact that you're able to do that as a group and are sort of going through all of the branches of the logic tree to try to find models that would work under a variety of conditions seems very logical, and I really appreciate the effort that's going into that. It's clear we're going to have uncertainty for some time to come. That's not an easy thing to deal with. So Mr. Reidinger's point about morale and trying to provide as much comfort, as much certainty as can be provided, given that things are a little uncertain at the moment. That's a difficult thing to do, but thank you all very much for the hard work you're doing. And I don't have any substantive questions because everybody already asked mine. So I just wanted to back up the thanks. And especially, I have heard a lot of very good comments about communications, about your emails and about the communications that have come out. I've had several people tell me they're very happy to see the morning announcements back online. It's a touch point of normalcy for a lot of folks. And so keeping that up, I think is working really well. So
Thank you.
Ms. Russell.
I just had one comment, I guess, regarding the communications that Greg just mentioned. This past weekend, we had I guess it was kind of block social distancing happy hour. And it's funny because even though I know my neighbors, we all have different age kids, et cetera, and we're not super close. So it was interesting to talk with them. And one of them said that she loves your Friday updates, loves your Friday updates. And that she says that she practically gets tears in her eyes, that she feels so touched by them and just really appreciates your genuine vulnerability in them. So thank you for